All right, it's Friday. That's always a good thing here on the Morning Pit because that means it is time for the Morning Pit Mailbag. I mean, it's a good thing in a lot of ways, Friday being the best day of the week, the day everyone looks forward to. Unless you're a college football fan, then you look forward to Saturdays, occasionally Thursdays, sometimes Fridays, sometimes Wednesdays, even Tuesdays. But in terms of the Morning Pit, in terms of this podcast, in terms of this YouTube channel, we look forward to Fridays here because it is the Morning Pit Mailbag where we take questions from you, the Pitt fans, about everything going on in the world of Pitt sports, Pitt football, basketball, recruiting, transfers, whatever it might be. We take your questions throughout the week, and then we answer as many as we can right here on the Morning Pit Mailbag. As always, we have great questions this week. I don't want to waste any more time. You like and subscribe, and let's dive into it. Morning Pitt Mailbag, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yes, Friday edition of the Morning Pit. We do the mailbag every week. We really have kind of a schedule throughout the week. Mondays are sort of recapping the game from the weekend. Tuesdays, we break down the notable things that Pat Narduzzi said in his weekly press conference on Mondays. Wednesdays and Thursdays, we kind of toss around different topics. This week, we had some basketball talk on Wednesday. Yesterday, we got into some of the big storylines for tomorrow's game. Probably next week will follow a similar pattern since there's a Pitt basketball game on Monday night, another exhibition game against UPJ. The Mountain Lions or Mountain Cats. Jim told us on Wednesday night what the mascot was, and I've already plumb forgot. But we'll probably we'll have a basketball episode next week, and then storylines, Pat Narduzzi press conference, weekend recap, all those different things. But it always culminates, and that changes with the season. It'll be a little bit different in the spring or the winter, in the summer than it is in the fall. But Fridays are always about the mailbag. And we take questions from Pitt fans on Panther-Lair.com, and we answer as many as we can. So let's jump into it here. We'll start with a couple of leftover questions from last week that we didn't get a chance to answer that I think are interesting and relevant to answer now. Remember, these questions were asked between the Florida State and Syracuse games, but they're still, I think, relevant, and particularly this one that starts off with our good friend Chris Gates says, what about Mason Heintschel's play feels distinctly different from Eli Holstein's first two games last season? I'm not trying to get too far ahead of myself with how good he has looked, because a few games into Eli's season last year, I was convinced we had our quarterback for the next few years. To me, it feels like he has a bit more command of what he's doing, which allows the offense to do more from a play calling perspective. Feels like there may be maybe there are less overthrows and dangerous balls, but all told, I'm not sure how different things are now as compared to Eli's hot start last year. So, I mean, Eli Holstein last year started his season against, his first two starts were Kent State and Cincinnati. Kent State, there's not a lot that you're going to tell from that game. Cincinnati was a game where, as we've often said, Eli Holstein played pretty poorly, and Pitt's offense played pretty poorly for 40 minutes, only really coming alive to get the comeback win in the final 20. And so, what do you take from that game? Certainly, those two games, Kent State and Cincinnati, are very different from Boston College at home and Florida State on the road. I mean, Boston College and Florida State are two ACC teams. Playing in Tallahassee is very different than playing in Cincinnati. And I think you would agree that, Mason Heintschel overall played much better in his first two games than Eli Holstein did in his first two. But again, it's a tough comparison because you have Kent State and a Big 12 team as opposed to two conference games. I think, and I like this question, and I wanted to take this question because it's really relevant to something that we talked about with Pat Narduzzi yesterday. And I asked Pat Narduzzi a question about, at his Thursday sit down. You can see that video here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I asked him a question about, when a young quarterback, an inexperienced guy, has some success scrambling, like Mason Heintschel has had, and like Eli Holstein had to some extent, is there almost sort of a downside to it that because they're good at it, they're able to make plays, and Mason Heintschel certainly has in his first three starts made some big plays with his legs, not the least of which being that game-opening touchdown, or Pitt's first touchdown, I should say, at Syracuse last Saturday night. And I said, is there a downside that when a young quarterback makes some of those plays in his first few games, that it becomes almost something of a default for him? That at the first sign of pressure or discomfort or not getting the look you expected or whatever it might be, he just automatically tucks and runs. And effectively asking, sort of where's the balance to it? And Pat Narduzzi's answer was more along the lines of, look, the key for Mason Heintschel is he needs to take what's there. The bigger, he almost seemed to say that the bigger problem you run into is not necessarily with the scrambling, but with the big passes downfield, that you hit a couple of those and now you think you have to hit one of those every time. Whereas the way the offense is designed, It's going to take what the defense is giving you. And if that's a 4-yard pass, a 5-yard pass, that's okay. Take those passes, and that's a good thing. And I think that's what you saw, take the Boston College game. So I have my game notes from that game right here. That's Florida State. Although Florida State's a good example. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 plays on Pitt's first drive, a touchdown drive, to open the game against Florida State. Boston College, Pitt's first drive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, effectively 12 plays. One of them was ruled a non-play due to a pass interference call in Boston College, but 11, 12 plays on a drive, chipping away. I mean, you look at that Boston College drive, right? It's the gains just by play, okay? Actually, we'll look by the passing play. 4, 7, 4, a 3-yard scramble. Another kind of a running play, and then a 14-yard touchdown. And even that 14-yard touchdown pass to Justin Holmes to open the Boston College game was not a 14-yard throw into the end zone. It wasn't standing at, snapping the ball from the 14 and firing into the corner of the end zone. It was a short little pass out to the flat. Like a 1 yard, there's probably 1 air yard, 2 air yards. Justin Holmes got all the yards after the catch on that touchdown because he broke a tackle and ran past a guy. That's the kind of thing they need Mason Heintschel to do. Now, you look at the Syracuse game, and I think you saw him getting away from that. Pitt's first drive, he didn't throw a pass on Pitt's first drive. Second drive, they did throw a 5-yard pass, but that was after a false start, so they were kind of, behind. They were off schedule, as coaches like to say. But he just didn't have many of those kinds of passes. I'm looking through. He had an 8-yard pass to Kenny Johnson, but it was on 2nd and 14. So, you're going to be able to get those, but you should take those. He had a 10-yard pass to Kenny Johnson, which was nice. He had a 12-yard pass to Blue Hicks. These are the kind of things that you need to do. These are the kind of passes you need to make. And this is probably the biggest step that Mason Heintschel needs to take in this game tomorrow is simply taking what the defense gives you. Like, take those short passes, because a 4-yard gain on first down is great. That's a win. We had the stat. I put it up on Panther-Lair.com yesterday, and it was a big article, lots of numbers in it, and probably a bit mind-numbing. But what it comes down to is when you look over these 3 games that Mason Heintschel has started, when Pitt gets 4 yards on first down, run or pass, when they get 4 yards on first down, they either convert the subsequent third down or don't even face third down 78% of the time. 78% of the 4-yard gains on first down turn into either a converted third down or they don't even see first down, or they don't even see third down. You understand what I'm saying? Like, they win that series of downs if they get 4 yards on first down 78% of the time. It's a huge percentage. Now, the problem is they don't get 4 yards every time. Looking at that Boston College thing, I closed my notes on the first down gains. See if we can find it. 89 total plays, 36 of them. 89 total plays over the first 3 games on first down. 36 of those 89 plays gained 4 yards or more. So they need to have more of those 4-yard gains on first down. That's sub 50%. Run or pass, and the percentages are a little bit better. I think 47% of their first down passes in the last 3 games have gained at least 4 yards, as opposed to it's a little bit, it's below, it's like 36% of their first down runs have gained 4 yards or more. But they need to stay on schedule. I know you want to hit those big passes. Take the 4-yard pass. You'll have a better chance of converting third down, getting a makeable third down and converting it and moving the sticks and marching downfield for those long multi-play drives like they had against Boston College and they had against Florida State. That's been a big issue. And then the other side too is, like, if you give Kenny Johnson a 4-yard pass, you give Blue Hicks a 4-yard pass, or Raphael Williams a 4-yard pass, or Desmond Reed a 4-yard pass, you've got a decent chance that they're going to get 6, 8, 10, 12, 20 yards out of it. I always make the point, get out of here, dog. I always make the point about that first third down in the second half against Florida State, where it's 3rd and 6, and he throws a 5-yard pass to Des Reed, just tries to gain the lead stick. And Des Reed, being Des Reed, turns it into a 50-yard gain. Take the short stuff, chip away, march downfield. That's the biggest thing Mason Heintschel needs to do. And I think, so coming back around to your question, Chris Gates, and we're spending a lot of time on just one question. We got to hustle it up here. Let's get it moving here, Coach. Coming back around to your question, Chris, I think that's where Eli Holstein could never find that happy balance of just chipping away, taking the short stuff, taking what's open, and stop. As Pat Narduzzi said yesterday, don't try to play hero ball. Don't try to be the hero. Just take what's there, march the ball down the field. And that's what Heintschel did well for the most part against Boston College, did pretty well against Florida State, and I don't think he did a great job of it against Syracuse, so you end up getting 5 out of your 7 sacks come on third down because they're third and long, because you haven't gotten the necessary gains on first down. All right, let's move on. Lacey22 says, Chris, Desmond Reed seems to be a cheat code in the passing game. How did all those FBS schools miss on him? I mean, they missed on him for the same reason that Pitt wouldn't have taken him. Pitt would not have taken Desmond Reed out of the transfer portal if Cade Bell wasn't there to vouch for him. Like, if Cade Bell left Pitt and took an offense coordinator job in the Big 12 or something like that, and Desmond Reed went into the transfer portal, he would have followed Bell. I don't think Pitt would have looked at him twice because he was small. Like, his size has been held against him, and people have counted him out because of his size. Cade Bell vouched for him. I think Pat Narduzzi had his doubts, but his brand new offensive coordinator says, no, we have to bring this guy in. And so they bring him in, and obviously he's been awesome. But that's how they missed on him, because you look at the size, and this is nothing new. Like, I can still remember stories about Dion Lewis when Pitt was recruiting him, and they had to, the assistant coaches had to fib to Dave Wanstead about how tall he actually was, because they knew he could play. They believed in him, but they also knew that the head coach was going to be like, are you kidding? This guy was 5'7". So they had to tell him he was like 5'9" or something like that. Sometimes those numbers on the paper, height, weight, 40 time, whatever it might be, end up counting for more than they should. And guys get overlooked as a result. Desmond Reed is certainly one of those guys. All right, questions from this week. I had some great questions here. Del Sardo one-handed. This is a long question, but boy, this is interesting. Actually, it's a 3-part question. For football, if they finish this season 7-5, beating NC State and Stanford, but losing the final 3, will the season be viewed as a success for the turnaround and 5-game win streak that Mason provided after a 2-2 start, or will winning 5 in a row but losing the last 3 bring up parallels from last year's 7-0 start and 0-5 finish, leaving a bad taste in people's mouth? Well, it won't be as bad as last year's losing streak, because partially the expectations won't be built quite as high. They'll be pretty high, though. Going 7-2 into November with the 3 biggest games on the schedule sitting there, a potential for, like, I would think if Pitt is 7-2 heading into the month of November and those final 3 games, Pitt will be ranked, and there's a better than even chance that all 3 of those teams, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, and Miami, will also be ranked. And so you're looking at potentially 3 ranked versus ranked games, right? So the expectations will be sky high. The hype will be sky high. And if they lose 3 in a row, I don't think it'll be as bad as last year. But, I mean, if your username on the message boards is Del Sardo one-handed, you've been around for a while. And so you know that people aren't going to handle that well. Any loss doesn't get handled well. And certainly 3 in a row is not going to be handled well at all. And the reaction will be, oh, great, they had a 5-game winning streak, but they beat Boston College, Florida State, Syracuse, NC State, Stanford. Boston College, Florida State, Syracuse, NC State, Stanford. And, who knows? A bunch of those teams could fire their coaches. It'll all be talked down on. Well, they just beat some bad teams. So when they actually played good teams, we saw where they really were. So I don't think there's going to be any good vibes coming out of that. I think that they are 7-2 going into the month of November. They need to win at least one of those games, even if it's Georgia Tech, who is probably the lowest profile, even though they're 7-0 right now out of those 3 teams. I don't think it'll bring up parallels to last year, because they'll also still have a bowl game where they could potentially go out and win it and be 8-5 in your scenario, or 9-4 in my scenario, where they go 1-2 in the month of November. First, you got to get to that point, obviously, and be 7-2, and then deal with it as it comes. But no, look, I spent the entire offseason after the 2018 season arguing with people about whether or not Pitt's 7-7 record in 2018 was a success because they won the Coastal Division. And I think the vast majority of fans felt like it was not a success. So, no, I don't think if they go, they win these next two, they get a 5-game winning streak, and then they lose 3 in a row to finish the season, I don't think fans are going to take any solace in the turnaround from 2-2 start and a 5-game winning streak. Del Sardo one-handed also asked for Pitt basketball. After the first exhibition game, whose stock is rising and whose stock is falling? It's two guys who I've mentioned in the same sentence a lot, I think, and it's Omari Witherspoon is the stock rising and Barry Dunning Jr. is the stock falling after one game, after one exhibition game. Largely because, I've said this a few times, Witherspoon has been, or in the exhibition game, Witherspoon was kind of the guy we expected, or I expected Barry Dunning Jr. to be. A lot of offensive energy, shot creator, a guy who goes out and just sort of brings, like I say, just brings energy to the offense. And I thought Barry Dunning Jr. was going to be that guy. He wasn't in the exhibition game. He was kind of a non-factor in the exhibition game, whereas Omari Witherspoon was really good and really exciting to watch. And so after one exhibition game, that's where I would say it. I think Witherspoon's going to keep playing well. I think Dunning Jr. will play better than he did in that game. But we'll see. We'll see on Monday night after 2 exhibition games who's where the stock market is pointing. And then recruiting-wise, if they do somehow manage to flip and eventually sign Matt Sig, what position does he fit best in this offense? Of course, the former Penn State commit, or maybe still committed, it doesn't matter. He's taking visits. He's visiting Pitt this weekend. I think he'd be a safety for Pitt. I don't know if he would eventually grow into an outside linebacker. I think he'd be safety, probably like a boundary safety, and be a really good fit there. NC Panther 99 says, gun to your head, does the mythical, legendary, Heisman Trophy hopeful or Jaden Moore play this Saturday? I'm reading that right off the paper. Or Jaden Moore. Listed on the depth chart all season as an or starter, has not dressed for a single game this year. My guess, like with Jaden Moore, and maybe I don't know if it would apply to anybody else. But I think with Jaden Moore, and I've said this on the message boards, that for me, I'm circling the Notre Dame game as a target to come back, because that's, this week, next week, and an off week, and then that game. So it's still 2 or 3 more weeks off. They do have a bye week or an off week between Stanford and Notre Dame. That's what I would circle. I do think he'll play this year. I think Jaden Moore will get on the field for Pitt this season. It's just a question of whether it's before that off week or he comes back for the final 3 games. I think it'll be a big boost to get him back. He better be awesome when he gets out there, because we've certainly talked him up enough. Smenjid says, with a healthy Desmond Reed, Mason Heintschel, Rasheem Biles, and Kyle Lewis, which of these games does Pitt win and why? At Stanford, at Georgia Tech, home against Notre Dame, home against Miami. I think, all right, if you've got Desmond Reed at 100% or as close as he's going to get to it, if you've got Mason Heintschel at 100%, you've got Rasheem Biles and Kyle Lewis, they should win at Stanford. Okay? And then Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, Miami, I don't know. I don't know what to make of those games, because here's my thing. And I've said different versions of this all week. I wrote about it in the 321 column that'll be posted on Panther-Lair.com later this morning. I 5 days of Morning Pitt episodes, 4 of which related to relevant to football or commenting on football, the live stream on Wednesday night, the post-game show on Saturday, the 321 column, all these message board posts, podcast interviews, all these different times that I've been talking. I just keep talking about the path that's ahead for Pitt, what they've given themselves an opportunity to do. And by winning at Florida State, by winning at Syracuse, they've given themselves an opportunity to really build toward making November interesting again. Because November wasn't interesting last year. I mean, in a bad way it was, as they kept losing. And it wasn't interesting in 2023 either. 2022, it was a real turnaround month. You remember they went undefeated in November. But for me, I look at this you've got to take care of business this week and next week. Okay, you've got to take care of business tomorrow against NC State and next week at Stanford. Because if you do that, then you are really playing for something in November when you get Notre Dame at home, go to Georgia Tech, and finish the season with Miami at home. You're playing for something. Something is on the line there. You're a 7-2 team with 3 games left to play. It could go any way. I think if you get to that point, everything is on the table. Everything from 10-2 to 9-3 to 8-4. And and 7-5. You know, I mean, like any of those possibilities is out there, and you could tell me any combination of, you know, beat Georgia Tech, lose to Notre Dame and Miami, beat Notre Dame, lose the other two, beat Miami, lose the other two, lose to Georgia Tech, win the other two, lose to Notre Dame, win the other two, lose to Miami, win the other two, get swept or sweep. Like, you could give any of those, I think, are on the table. And this team, I think, is good enough to do it, but they've got to get there. Like, the most important thing that happens is that you win these two games, so you are really playing for something, and you're a ranked team, and you've got something at stake. I actually, I wrote this in the 3-2-1 column that, beating Syracuse didn't just up the stakes for Pitt. They've created the stakes. And if they beat NC State tomorrow, they're not just going to up the stakes. They're creating the stakes. All of these games are creating the stakes for what they can do in November. Like, it's all building toward that. And you can't overlook any of these games, because if you blow it in these games, then November becomes not irrelevant, but a whole lot less interesting and notable and relevant than it would have been if you win out here in this, final or first, 3 quarters of the season. So, to me, like, which of these games does Pitt win? I think they win at Stanford if they've got Des Reed and Mason Heintschel and Rasheem Biles and Kyle Lewis. And then you get into those final 3 games where you go on the field and you see who's better for 3.5 hours on a Saturday. And, like, I hope we all get a chance to see that. Like, I hope we get to see some relevant, interesting football in November, because, like, even 2022 when they won all 4 games in November, like that was a great win streak, really interesting games and all this stuff. The multiple pick sixes to open the game at Virginia, kind of really strong defensive effort. In the Syracuse game, the Duke game got really interesting that year, and then the let's do everything in our power to get Jared Wayne 1,000 yards at Miami regular season finale. Like, it was interesting, but there was nothing on the line. Like, there was nothing at stake. Because of how they blew it in October, there was nothing on the line there. There's a chance for something to be on the line. There's a chance for these November games to matter, and I hope we get a chance to see that. Just for the compelling side of it. Some relevant football, like it was in 2021, when those games in November really mattered, except for the regular season finale against Syracuse. That didn't matter. But those games in November really mattered. And, like, that was fun. Not like, obviously the outcomes, good for business. Pitt fans are happy. Life is better on the message boards when Pitt wins. But, like, just to be able to witness, observe, report on, and be sort of actively involved in interesting, compelling football that has some stakes attached to it. Like, I hope we get a chance for that. And so, win these 2 and make November matter. Let's see, scrolling through here. Atwood409 says, does Kyle Lewis go pro? Who on the team could get drafted? I mean, I think, if they finish up strong, I would have to imagine that Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles will try in the NFL. I don't know if the senior corners Rashad Battle and Tamon Lynham would get drafted or not. I'm not sure. I don't know if they would test well enough to get drafted. Looking around, I mean, maybe Ryan Baer, like maybe one of those senior offensive linemen might have a chance. Who knows? Maybe if Kenny Johnson goes on a tear in the next 5 regular season games, maybe he might look at the NFL. I think there's some possibilities there. But it's tough. It's tough to say without seeing who's going to go out. But I mean, I think Lewis and Biles would be draft picks if they go. Richard2928 says, with NIL in the portal, do you think that parity has come to college football? Yes and no. It's interesting. Like, I feel like there are some teams that have been able to use NIL in the portal to elevate themselves and build up their depth. Like, we're going to go get the starters from mid-range or bottom-tier ACC teams to be our depth players. And I think you've seen that happen with some of the bigger schools, some of the top schools. But then at the same time, there are other top schools that I think have lost some of their depth when those guys say, I want to go somewhere and play as opposed to being a backup here. So I think that, maybe initially you were seeing more of the former, But maybe recently you're seeing a little bit more of the latter, and that has created some parity and even things out. I think we're also talking after like a week or two where a bunch of top 10 teams lost and a bunch of ranked teams lost, and parity is the big narrative. In this very specific moment of the season. By 2 days from now, we may be talking about how the best are the best and there's no parity and everything, the cream's rising to the top and all of that kind of thing. 2 weeks, we might be talking about you see it's the elite are still the elite. Enough talk of parity. This goes week to week. It always changes around, and right now, when we're shortly removed from a bunch of top 10 teams losing, it feels like there's lots of parity in college football. Well, we'll see. By the end of the year, we'll see. We'll see who makes the playoffs. We'll see who wins in the playoffs. Maybe Indiana is the shining example of parity in college football. But we'll see who makes the playoffs. We'll see who wins in the playoffs, and we can make our distinctions there. All right, let's take one more question because we're going for a while here on this week's mailbag. Let's see. Foge Fazio fan 356 says, we've often seen the linebackers being the ones to clean up sacks. With C.J. Bailey being as mobile as he is, do you think Lappy and Lindsey have what it takes to put forth an effective game plan for NC State's offense? I think they've done well historically against running quarterbacks. I don't think there have been a ton of guys who have been able to really go off against Pitt as a running quarterback, a mobile quarterback like C.J. Bailey is. But if you're out there with backups, if you're out there with a walk-on or a redshirt freshman and guys that are inexperienced, that's a new kind of challenge, And I think athletically they're probably up to it. I think you do have to step down, like collectively as a duo, from Lewis and Biles to Lappy and Lindsey. But those guys played pretty well at Syracuse. They really did. There didn't seem to be a lot of drop off. That was a different kind of offense. And this offense from NC State is probably more talented. CJ Bailey's a better quarterback. I think their running back is better. No disrespect to Yassine Willis. I think they've got some better pass catchers, at least guys that'll be available, and with a quarterback who can get them the ball. So it'll be a different kind of challenge. But I don't know. I think Lappy and Lindsey impressed me last week. And I think they showed that they can play. Now, that doesn't mean you'll be fine without Lewis and Biles. You want Lewis and Biles. If you can get Lewis and Biles, you want Lewis and Biles. But Lappy and Lindsey, I think they can be pretty solid. And maybe they showed you on Saturday night that they could take more reserve reps. That if you have Lewis and Biles, you don't necessarily need to play them for 65 or 75 snaps or something like that. You can moderate their workload and maybe sub for those guys a little bit more than you might have thought you were capable of doing because of what Lappy and Lindsey showed you last week at the Dome. So it's a drop-off, but I think those guys can play. This will be an interesting challenge, though. I'll be interested to see how they do against C.J. Bailey and this NC State offense. All right, make sure you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com that we never miss any of our Pitt video content. We have lots of it for you here, the Morning Pitt, Monday through Friday, weekly live show every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. and our post-game show tomorrow. Game is kicking off at 3:30. Should be back to the Panther-Lair offices around 9:30, so we'll probably start the live post-game show somewhere around there. If you want to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, turn on your notifications, and you'll get an alert sent to your phone every time we go live. So that's how we can keep you posted on when the post-game show will start. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Thanks for watching the videos all week. Make sure you like and subscribe. Have a great Friday. We'll see you at the game tomorrow. And then we'll talk to you on the post-game show right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.